Hello friends, this is Growl. Today I wanted to cover specific Discipline Priest gameplay in Mythic Plus for Shadowlands. If you're in the process of deciding what class you want to main, this video is designed to give you some insight as to what I think about the current state of Disc Priest and what dungeons will be like. I want to cover the basics in this video, along with some Covenant and talent choices that I think may be best. And at the end, I'm going to give my best guess as to how I would rank it and answer some of the more common questions I get from my stream. I'll be sure to leave a table of contents for the video time if you're already familiar with the basics and just want to skip ahead. Before I start, I just want to mention that in the last video with my Discipline Priest footage, I got lots of questions about my party frames and weak aura setup, so I'll be sure to leave links in the description for you to check those out if you're interested. Out of all the healers in the Shadowlands beta, I think I've had the most fun with this Priest. It could be because I didn't get the opportunity to play it in Battle for Azeroth, but either way I'm having a blast. Discipline heals via atonements, short 15-second buffs that are applied to allies when you use your healing spells. Then, whenever you deal damage, all allies with atonement are healed for 50% of the damage done. This makes dealing damage an integral part of the rotation, and sometimes it can feel like you're even playing a DPS class. When the incoming damage is too much, you also have a few strong cooldowns at your disposal to help. Priest also has a handful of cool utility spells, and I think they got the most improved utility kit moving into Shadowlands. Discipline Priest's biggest strength right now is its damage. Because offensive spells are part of your healing rotation, you're always contributing a meaningful amount of damage, even on very dangerous encounters. More damage means faster runs and quicker bosses. The current Covenant choice, Kyrian, also gives one of the strongest AoE burst cooldowns among any healer right now, but we'll go over that later. Priest damage reduction is also fairly strong. Pain suppression is a powerful 40% damage reduction on a single target, and barrier, while only being 25%, will affect anyone inside. Although one-shot mechanics likely won't be an issue until gear gets really powerful, Priests are great against heavy, predictable burst damage with their shields, fortitude buff, and damage reduction. Priests also have an insanely cool utility kit for Mythic Plus. Leap of Faith has to be one of the funnest spells to use as a healer. All those times you see your ally standing in bad and you know he's about to die, as a priest you can just yoink him right over. There's some opportunity for griefing too, but we would never do that, would we? Power Infusion gives you a 2-minute cooldown haste buff that you can use on yourself or allies. So not only is your own damage strong, but you're also boosting your teammates' damage. Mass Dispel now works against the affix bursting, so Priest went from being one of the weaker bursting healers to now the strongest by far. One of the abilities I underestimated most, but one that will prove insanely valuable for Mythic Plus, is Mind Soothe. Mind Soothe reduces the aggro range of the target by 10 yards, making it much easier to sneak around dangerous packs that you're trying to avoid. For pugging especially, this is great. It means you might not need a rogue, and also you can help prevent people from pulling stuff on accident when you're sneaking between packs. There are a few things that Disc struggles with, however. First, I think you can tend to be a bit cooldown reliant. Although atonement healing is great for small to medium amounts of damage, you have to pre-plan cooldowns for big bursts. Misuse of cooldowns can often lead to a wipe on difficult bosses, and with the Prideful affix, I can imagine on higher keys it might be tough to allocate your cooldowns between a big pack and then a Prideful and then a tough boss. Rapture being an insanely strong cooldown on only 1.5 minute recharge does make it a bit more manageable though. Another glaring weakness of Priest is their lack of mobility and overall squishiness. If you're used to playing other healers, it can be much more difficult to stay alive as a Priest. Your only defensive, Desperate Prayer is extremely weak compared to other healers' personal cooldowns, so you need to be prioritizing your life heavily. You're also in cloth armor, so any unavoidable physical damage like archer shots can hit you really hard. It's very difficult to get out of danger, and if you know that you can't get out, you have a very low chance of survival. I would say, given all these things, Discipline Priest has a bit higher of a learning curve than the other healers. It can be a bit tough juggling dealing damage and your own survival with the healing, however, it's very rewarding. Whenever I mention difficulty, I don't want it to be something that scares people off though. The difficulty scaling in WoW is pretty lenient, and you can take raids or dungeons at your own pace and do pretty easy content until you learn the ropes. It just might take a bit longer to learn than other classes. In Shadowlands, you choose to align with one Covenant. For Discipline Priest, I think Kyrian is the best option. Kyrian gives you access to Ascendant's Boon, which is a 3-minute heavy burst cooldown that does both large amounts of healing and damage over 10 seconds. If you throw up a Radiance to apply atonements to your party, then throw on a power infusion before you activate it, you can be putting out insane damage and healing to get through almost any difficult situation. The Kyrian Soulbind ability is also quite helpful for Priest. You can summon a steward to follow you around and play a sad song for all of your teammates that died because you don't actually know how to play Discipline. No, really, the potions that the steward brings can remove diseases, poisons, curses, and bleeds, which is extremely helpful because as a priest you can only remove diseases. It's a bit unfortunate that Night Fae isn't a better option to give you that increased mobility, however Kyrian is just really strong right now in dungeons. Although the selection of priest legendaries is quite weak, the one that I think is the best is also incredibly fun to use. Kiss of Death reduces the cooldown of your Shadow Word Death by 8 seconds, and also causes it to apply atonement healing. Shadow Word Death is an incredibly fun spell to use, dealing a decent amount of damage with a reasonable mana cost and a short cooldown. The damage is also increased by 175% to targets below 20% health. However, the downside is if you don't kill the target, the same amount of damage is dealt back to you. Using this legendary allows you to add death to your normal rotation, increasing your damage and healing immensely. There's a lot of strategy to the use of this. Generally, you want to be using it on cooldown, however, you might want to delay the cast slightly if the mob is soon going to drop below 20%, or if the mob is soon going to be in kill range. Caution also needs to be taken in using it if you're going to be in danger. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great meme clips of top healers dying to Shadow Word Death in important moments. This is the talent setup I've been running in dungeons. It's actually somewhat different to what most priests are running in BFA. With the addition of Shadow Word Death, Mind Blast, and Shadow Covenant, I was having some problems working in Schism and Solace without losing throughput. I decided to use Twist of Fate and Mindbender just for a little bit more coverage when I didn't have cooldowns up. I sort of use Shadow Covenant as a replacement for Schism. Although it is a bit weaker, I think I'm getting the bigger benefit from Twist of Fate over Sins of the Many in difficult healing scenarios. The new talent Spirit Shell, I think, doesn't compete with Lenience and will probably only be used in specific situations for really rough bosses. Overall, I think Discipline was the most improved healer class for dungeons going into Shadowlands, gaining damage, healing, and utility from the skills, covenants, and legendaries. The question is, how would I rank them? I'm happy giving Priest a 9 out of 10. They are extremely solid dungeon healers that bring a lot to the group. However, with fair risk-reward gameplay, more difficult survival, and proper planning still needed. It's not like they're overpowered or anything. Although I'm happy for Disc to have gained so much power, it's a bit unfortunate to see some of the other weaker healer specs not getting this much love, especially Holy Priest. Before I wrap up the video, I want to talk about some of the questions I get asked most on my stream that didn't get covered yet. Are you worried about Disc being too good in raids and getting nerfed after the game goes live, similar to what happened in the last expansion? I didn't mention it much in this video because it was focused on dungeon healing, but one of the benefits of Discipline is that it's also a very solid raid healer. I'm definitely a little bit worried. It's a possibility that it gets nerfed. Although I usually think it's a bad idea to try and play the guess what Blizzard is gonna nerf game and just play whatever you want to play. If you end up feeling like you're roadblocked and you can't get into groups or can't go higher, you can always decide to play another class down the line. Season 1 will be all about discovery, so I wouldn't worry that much about what the meta is going to be. I think it's possible that Disc gets nerfed, however the difference between now and before is a lot of the stuff that makes them good doesn't even apply to raid at all, like Mind Soothe or Mass Dispel, so I think it's less likely. What tank works best with Discipline? This is a topic that I sort of overlooked, but I get this question a lot since it's common that people are making characters with their friends and they want to put together pairings that work well. Discipline and Blood DK are great because Blood doesn't really need heavy healing, just the passive atonement that keeps them top most of the time. And the speed boosts and absorbs from Power Word Shield can be really nice for Blood DK. I also think Vengeance will probably be a good pairing, just because it's looking like a solid, durable tank right now. Disc and Brew or Disc and Prop Pally might be a bit weaker since they need more direct healing. You also may want to consider having a battle res buddy if you're playing Disc Priest since you won't have one yourself. That covers everything I wanted to talk about for Discipline Priest dungeon gameplay in Shadowlands. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a like and subscribe to my channel, as I'll be covering tons of Shadowlands content from beginner all the way to the highest levels of Mythic Plus. Happy keying!